I never thought I'd stumble into a place like this. Not out of curiosity, not even on a dare. Yet, there I was, standing in the doorway of the Velvet Rose, a strip club on the far side of town. The faint smell of smoke and perfume hung heavy in the air, mingling with the dull thud of music that made the walls pulse. I wasn't here for the ambience, though. This wasn't some wild night out with friends. It was desperation that brought me here. My name's Victor. I'm 38 years old, an accountant by trade, and until last week, I thought I had a stable, if not ordinary, life. But cracks had been forming. Ones I hadn't wanted to acknowledge until I had no choice. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. My wife, Anna, had become distant. She claimed she was working late, doing freelance projects to bring in extra cash. I never questioned it, not really. She had always been independent, fiercely so. It was one of the things I admired about her. But as the weeks went by, something gnawed at me. The late nights became more frequent. Her explanations were vague, almost rehearsed. Just another client, she'd say with a tight smile. Her wardrobe began to change subtly to more form-fitting dresses, higher heels. At first, I dismissed my unease. She's working hard, I told myself, trying to look professional. But then there were the phone calls. One night, as we were watching TV, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The name flashing across the screen wasn't familiar. Jenna Starr. When I asked who it was, Anna casually said it was a woman from her Pilates class. That was my first clue something wasn't right. Anna hated Pilates. I brushed it off, not wanting to jump to conclusions. But something stayed with me, a sharp thorn of doubt pressing against my chest. It wasn't until a friend of mine, Mark, let something slip that the pieces began to fall into place. We were having beers after work, and he leaned in, his voice low. You ever been to the Velvet Rose? Crazy place, man. You wouldn't believe the things that go on in there. I shook my head, laughing nervously. Not my scene. Yeah, he said, pausing. You know, I could have sworn I saw someone who looked a lot like Anna there the other night. But that'd be crazy. Huh. I froze. My heart thudded in my chest. Anna? My wife, Anna? Mark's face paled. Oh man, I shouldn't have said anything. Forget I mentioned it. But I couldn't forget. The idea planted itself in my mind and refused to let go. Could it be true? My wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world, working in a strip club? That's how I found myself standing at the entrance of the Velvet Rose. A burly man at the door raised an eyebrow. You coming in, or what? I hesitated, then stepped inside. The dim light made everything feel surreal. Women in shimmering outfits weaved through the crowd, laughter and catcalls filling the room. And then I saw her. Anna, my wife. She was up on the stage, moving with a confidence I barely recognized. Her hair cascaded down her back, and her smile was wide, but it didn't reach her eyes. She wore a glittering outfit that left nothing to the imagination, and the crowd roared as she bent low, collecting tips from eager hands. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my world collapsing around me. What do you do when the person you love becomes a stranger before your very eyes? I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in place, watching Anna as if she were a character in someone else's story. My feet felt cemented to the floor, my chest tightening with every cheer and whistle from the men around the stage. I wanted to storm out, to erase the image from my mind and pretend it never happened. But anger and disbelief held me there. This wasn't just some random woman. This was Anna. My Anna, the woman I'd vowed to love. And here she was, spinning under neon lights, soaking in the attention of a crowd full of strangers. She hadn't seen me yet. I didn't want to be noticed. Not here, not now. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. How long has she been doing this? Why didn't she tell me? Was it because of me? Asterisk. Hey, buddy, you okay? I turned sharply. A young waitress with short, dyed pink hair was standing beside me, holding a tray of empty glasses. Her eyebrows were raised in concern. Yeah, I'm fine, I stammered, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. She tilted her head, unconvinced. First time here? You look out of place. I managed a weak nod. Yeah, first time. She glanced toward the stage, where Anna had just finished her routine. The applause was deafening as she scooped up her tips and disappeared behind a curtain. Some of these girls, man, the waitress said, shaking her head with a knowing smirk. They're full of secrets. You'd be surprised. Yeah, I muttered, my voice barely audible. Surprised. The waitress left me alone, and I stood there trying to decide what to do. My instincts told me to confront Anna immediately, but something else held me back. I needed to understand this, to figure out what had driven her to such a life. I moved to a corner of the club where the shadows offered some anonymity. My eyes scanned the room, following the direction Anna had gone. Minutes felt like hours until I finally saw her reemerge, dressed now in a simple black dress that clung to her frame. She didn't look like the confident performer from moments ago. She looked tired. I followed her outside, keeping my distance as she walked toward the back alley where the staff parking lot was. The dim glow of a street lamp lit her face as she pulled out her phone, scrolling with furrowed brows. Anna, I called, stepping out from the shadows. She froze, her body stiffening at the sound of my voice. Slowly, she turned to face me, her eyes widening with shock. Victor? She whispered. Her voice cracked, and for a moment I thought she might cry. But then her expression hardened. What are you doing here? I took a step closer, feeling the weight of every unanswered question between us. I could ask you the same thing. How long, Anna? How long have you been doing this? Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. She glanced around nervously, as though searching for an escape. Don't, I said sharply, cutting off her retreat. Don't lie to me. I saw you. I saw everything. She sighed heavily, her shoulders slumping as the facade crumbled. I didn't want you to find out like this. That's what you have to say? I asked, my voice rising. You didn't want me to find out? Were you planning on telling me at all? Or was this just going to be your secret forever? Anna crossed her arms defensively, her voice rising to meet mine. It's not what you think, Victor. Not what I think? I laughed bitterly. You're working in a strip club, Anna. What am I supposed to think? That it's some kind of hobby? Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. My own emotions were a hurricane. Anger, betrayal, humiliation. I did this for us, she snapped, her voice trembling. For us, I echoed, incredulous. You think this is for us? You lied to me. You hid this from me. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Anna's tears spilled over, but she didn't back down. You don't understand. After the business went under and the debt started piling up, I didn't know what else to do. I was drowning, Victor. We were drowning. I stared at her, her words hitting me. The truth twisted everything I thought I knew. You should have come to me, I said quietly, my voice shaking. You should have trusted me. And do what? She fired back. Watch you crumble under the pressure? Watch you lose yourself trying to fix everything? I couldn't do that to you, Victor. I couldn't. I shook my head, struggling to process her explanation. Her betrayal wasn't born of malice, but that didn't make it any easier to swallow. We need to talk, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Her shoulders sagged, and she nodded. Not here, she said. Not like this. As we walked to the car in heavy silence, I realized this was only the beginning. The wounds were fresh, and the road ahead felt long and uncertain. And yet, beneath the layers of betrayal, anger, and heartbreak, one question lingered. Was there any way back from this? The car ride home was suffocating. The tension sat between us like a third passenger, weighing down every breath, every unspoken word. Anna sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze locked on the darkened streets outside. Neither of us spoke until we pulled into the driveway. Even then, the silence followed us like a shadow into the house. The familiar comfort of home felt alien now, its walls heavy with the secrets that had come to light. Talk, I said finally, breaking the silence as I tossed my keys onto the counter. Anna hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for the right words hidden among the furniture. "It started about 6 months ago," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I clenched my jaw. 6 months? You've been lying to me for half a year, Anna. Her face twisted with guilt, but she didn't flinch. "It wasn't supposed to last this long. I thought I'd do it for a few weeks, just until we could catch up on the mortgage and the bills. But then things kept piling up, and you didn't think to tell me?" I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. "You didn't think we could face this together?" Anna's eyes filled with tears, but her tone was defensive. "Face it together? Victor, I watched you lose everything when your business went under. You were barely sleeping, barely eating. I couldn't add this burden to you. So you decided to handle it by taking your clothes off for strangers?" I shot back, the bitterness in my words cutting deeper than I meant. Anna winced but didn't back down. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I dreamed of this? I did it because I didn't see any other way. There's always another way." I slammed my fist on the counter, the sound echoing through the room. "You humiliated yourself. No, you humiliated us. You lied to me, Anna." Her tears spilled over now, streaking her face. "I did it for you, Victor. For us. For our home. I didn't want to see you lose everything you worked for." Her words hung in the air, twisting the knife of guilt into my chest. She wasn't wrong. I had been drowning. But I had never asked her to do this. "You should have trusted me," I said, my voice quieter now, though no less strained. "I would have found a way." Anna sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "I was scared, okay? Scared that we'd lose the house, that we'd fall apart. I just wanted to help." I ran a hand through my hair, pacing the room as my emotions warred inside me. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe that her actions, however misguided, had come from a place of love. But another part, the part that felt betrayed, humiliated, was louder. "Did anyone know?" I asked after a long silence. "Did any of our friends know what you were doing?" Anna shook her head quickly.
No.
"I made sure of it. I didn't tell anyone." I exhaled, the smallest relief washing over me. But it wasn't enough. "And tonight," I said, my voice hardening again, "do you know what it felt like, standing there, seeing my wife up on that stage, seeing other men? I didn't know you'd be there," she cried, cutting me off. "I never wanted you to find out like this. But I did." I snapped, my words like a whip. "And now, every time I close my eyes, that's all I see. You up there. Them looking at you. Cheering for you." Her sobs filled the room, raw and unrestrained. And for a moment, I felt the tiniest twinge of regret. But it was buried beneath the avalanche of everything else. "I need time to think," I said finally, my voice hollow. Anna looked up, her tear-streaked face a mixture of fear and desperation. "Victor, please, don't give up on us." I didn't answer, couldn't. Instead, I grabbed my coat and walked out the door, leaving her cries behind me. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but it wasn't enough to clear my mind. I walked aimlessly through the quiet streets, replaying everything in my head. Her excuses, her tears, her betrayal. I didn't know what hurt more, the lie itself or the realization that the woman I thought I knew had become a stranger. As the moon hung heavy above me, I made a vow to myself. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't let her actions define me. I would find justice, not just for the marriage we'd lost, but for my own self-respect. The next morning, I returned home, though I wasn't sure why. I didn't sleep much, wandering the city streets until dawn. The house was quiet when I stepped inside, the heavy stillness wrapping itself around me like a shroud. Anna was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had probably gone cold. "You didn't come back last night," she said softly, her voice brittle. "I needed air," I replied curtly, hanging my coat. I didn't look at her as I poured myself a cup of coffee, the tension between us palpable. "We can't leave this like it is, Victor," she said, her voice trembling. I turned to face her, my eyes meeting hers. I haven't decided what this is yet. Her face crumpled, but she held back the tears this time. I told you everything, Victor. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I interrupted sharply. And now I'm supposed to just… What? Pretend this didn't happen? Pretend you didn't lie to me every single night you walked out that door? Anna flinched at my words, her hands tightening around the mug. I don't want to lose you. You already lost me, Anna. I shot back, my voice colder than I intended. The minute you decided to keep this from me, you lost me. She sat in silence, the weight of my words pressing down on her. Finally, she spoke, her voice small. I'll quit. I'll never go back there. Please, Victor, just tell me how to fix this. You don't fix something like this overnight, I said, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. You don't just sweep it under the rug and hope it goes away. I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized the depth of the damage she'd caused. For a moment, I thought I might soften, that I might reach for her hand and offer her some shred of comfort. But then the memory of her on that stage flashed through my mind, and the anger flared again. I need space, I said finally, turning away from her. I can't be in the same house right now. Victor, please, she pleaded, standing up. Don't leave. Let's work through this together. I grabbed my keys, ignoring her. Together? You don't even know what that means. Anna, if you did, you wouldn't have done this in the first place. Her sobs followed me as I walked out the door, but I didn't look back. That evening, I found myself in an unlikely place. Mark's house. He opened the door with a look of surprise. Victor, he asked, what's going on? I need to talk, I said simply, stepping past him into his living room. He shut the door behind me, gesturing for me to sit. Is this about Anna? So you did see her there? Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I did. I didn't want to say anything because I figured you knew. Or that it wasn't my business. I laughed bitterly. Trust me, Mark. It's your business now. Because I can't carry this alone. He sat down across from me, his expression serious. What do you want to do? That's the thing, I said, running a hand through my hair. I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive her, to move past this, but the other part… I trailed off, my voice cracking. The other part can't stop seeing her on that stage. Mark nodded, his face grim. I can't tell you what to do, man, but if it were me, I'd make damn sure she understood the consequences of what she did. Consequences? I repeated, the words settling in my mind. Mark leaned forward. You need to decide if this is something you can forgive. And if it's not, you need to figure out how to walk away with your head held high. I nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. I think I know what I have to do. For the first time since discovering Anna's secret, I felt a glimmer of clarity. Whatever came next, I wouldn't let her betrayal define me. After leaving Mark's house, I drove aimlessly through the city, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Mark's words lingered, repeating like a mantra. Make sure she understands the consequences. It wasn't about revenge. At least that's what I told myself. It was about justice, about reclaiming my dignity and making it clear that Anna's choices had shattered more than just our trust. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the outline of a plan was beginning to form in my mind. It wasn't fully fleshed out yet, but it was enough to give me a sense of direction. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Anna was sitting in the living room. She looked up when I entered, hope flickering briefly in her expression. You came back, she whispered. I nodded curtly, hanging up my coat. We need to talk. Anna swallowed hard, unfolding herself from the couch. I'll do whatever it takes, Victor. I'll quit. I'll find a new job. Stop, I said, holding up a hand. This isn't something you can fix with promises, Anna. You broke something in us, and I'm not sure it can be repaired. Tears welled in her eyes, but she stayed silent, sensing that I wasn't finished. I've been thinking, I continued, my tone measured. You say you did this for us, for the bills, the mortgage. Fine, I'll take you at your word. But actions have consequences, Anna. You need to face that. She looked at me warily. What does that mean? I took a deep breath, leaning against the back of the couch. You need to understand what it feels like to have your life stripped bare, to feel exposed and humiliated. Only then can we even begin to talk about moving forward. Her eyes widened, panic creeping into her expression. What are you saying, Victor? I'm saying we're going to the bathhouse, I replied, my voice calm but firm. Anna's brow furrowed in confusion. What are you talking about? It's simple, I said, meeting her gaze. You're going to experience what it feels like to be in a vulnerable position, surrounded by people who see you as nothing more than an object. Maybe then you'll understand how I felt when I saw you up on that stage. Her face paled. Victor, you can't be serious. That's cruel. Cruel, I snapped, my voice rising. You think what you did wasn't cruel? You think lying to me for 6 months wasn't cruel? Anna shook her head, her hands trembling. I was trying to help us. I never meant to hurt you. Well, you did, I said coldly. And now it's time to face the fallout. For a long moment, we stared at each other, the silence between us crackling with tension. Finally, she broke eye contact, her shoulders sagging in defeat. If this is what it takes to make you see that I'm sorry, she said quietly, then I'll do it. I nodded, though a part of me wondered if this plan was as much for her as it was for me. The path we were on was steep and treacherous, but I wasn't ready to turn back. The morning came too soon. The faint light creeping through the curtains did little to ease the tension that still hung in the air. Anna was quiet as she moved around the house, her movements sluggish and heavy. I knew she wasn't happy about what I'd proposed. But then again, neither was I. This wasn't some petty game. It was about setting the scales right, even if it meant dragging us both through hell in the process. By the time noon rolled around, I'd made the arrangements. I called a couple of old friends, guys I trusted who had seen me at my best and my worst. When I explained the situation, they didn't question me. They simply said they'd be there. Anna watched me from the other side of the kitchen as I hung up the phone, her arms crossed over her chest. So, this is really happening, she said, her voice flat. I nodded, meeting her gaze. Yes, it is. And your friends? She asked, her tone laced with bitterness. You told them everything, didn't you? I told them what they needed to know, I replied evenly. They know enough to understand why this is necessary. Anna shook her head, a humorless laugh escaping her lips. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Punishing me, dragging me through the mud. I took a step closer, my eyes narrowing. You think this is fun for me? Watching my wife, stand on that stage, letting strangers gawk at her? Knowing that the woman I trusted lied to me for months? No, Anna, I'm not enjoying this. But you need to feel what I felt. She flinched, but she didn't look away. And after this, what? Do you forgive me? Do we go back to normal? I hesitated, the question cutting deeper than I expected. I don't know, I admitted finally. But we can't even start to figure that out until you understand the damage you've done. The rest of the day passed in strained silence. Anna spent most of it upstairs, while I made the final arrangements. By the time the evening arrived, I felt like a man walking to his own execution. The bathhouse was a small, exclusive venue, a place where indulgence and shame often mingled in equal measure. My friends and I arrived first, and the atmosphere was exactly as I expected. Steamy, dimly lit, and heavy with the scent of eucalyptus and something more primal. Anna arrived shortly after, escorted by one of the staff I'd arranged to meet her at the entrance. When she stepped into the room, dressed in a robe that clung to her uneasily, the murmurs began. My friends looked at me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Are you sure about this? One of them asked. Yes, I said firmly, though my stomach churned. She needs to learn. Anna's eyes darted around the room, her discomfort palpable. But she didn't back down. She stood there, shoulders squared, waiting for what was to come. I cleared my throat, addressing the group. This isn't about humiliation. It's about understanding. Anna has something she wants to share with us. Don't you, Anna? Her eyes flashed with anger and fear, but she nodded, stepping forward. Yes, she said quietly. I have something to share. And so the evening began. The room fell silent as Anna stood at the center, her hands clutching the edges of her robe. Her gaze darted to me, then to the small group of men gathered, their faces shadowed by the dim light. I could see her chest rise and fall with each shaky breath, her discomfort radiating like heat waves. This isn't what I expected my life to look like, she began, her voice barely audible over the steady hum of the room. My friends exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of the scene. None of us had rehearsed this. It was raw, unfiltered, and as uncomfortable as I'd hoped it would be, for her and for me. I made choices, Anna continued, her voice growing steadier, though her hands still trembled. Bad ones. I lied to my husband. I betrayed his trust. And I let things spiral out of control. She swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. But I didn't do it because I wanted to hurt him. I thought I was protecting him, protecting us. I see now that I was wrong. Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to maintain a cold exterior. Inside, though, something twisted. I had wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, to understand the weight of what she'd done. But seeing her like this, her defenses stripped away, it didn't bring the satisfaction I'd expected. Do you think this is enough, Anna? I asked, my voice steady but sharp. Do you think a few words can undo the damage you've caused? She flinched but didn't look away. No, she said firmly. But I had to start somewhere. One of my friends cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Victor, maybe that's enough for tonight, he said carefully, glancing between us. No, I snapped, turning on him. This isn't about making her feel better. It's about accountability. Anna's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of defiance. And what about you, Victor? She asked, her voice sharp. How far are you willing to go to punish me? To punish us? When does it stop? Her words hit like a slap. I opened my mouth to respond but found I had no answer. For the first time, I wondered if this wasn't justice but vengeance, and if I'd already taken it too far. The room grew colder, or maybe that was just my imagination. Anna's words had pierced through the armor I'd carefully constructed around my anger. When does it stop? I stared at her, searching for the defiant woman who had just spoken, but her vulnerability was still there, etched across her face. She stood straighter now, though, her trembling hands finally still. I'm not trying to make excuses, she continued, her voice calmer. But you don't get to destroy me to make yourself feel better, Victor. I know I hurt you. I hurt us, but this isn't justice. It's cruelty. My friends shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether they should stay or leave. Mark stepped closer to me, his voice low. Maybe we call it a night, man. You've made your point. But had I? I looked at Anna again, and for the first time I saw the cracks in my plan. What had I hoped to achieve with this spectacle? To humiliate her the way I had felt humiliated? To make her beg for forgiveness in front of others? I ran a hand over my face, exhaustion and doubt creeping in. Fine, I said finally, my voice low. We're done here. Anna exhaled sharply, relief flashing across her face. My friends murmured awkward goodbyes and shuffled out, leaving us alone in the bathhouse's quiet stillness. For a moment we just stood there, the silence between us thicker than ever. Finally, Anna broke it. Is this how you see me now? She asked, her voice raw. As someone who deserves to be dragged through the dirt, paraded in front of people who have no business knowing our struggles? I don't know what I see anymore, I admitted, my tone weary. All I know is that I needed you to understand how it felt to be blindsided like that. To feel like the person you trusted most was a stranger. I do understand, she said, stepping closer. But this, Victor, this isn't you. This isn't the man I fell in love with. I scoffed, the bitterness rising again. Maybe I'm not that man anymore. Did you think about that when you decided to lie to me? When you chose this over your marriage? Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't look away. I chose wrong, Victor. I know that. But if we're going to survive this, if there's even a chance, we can't keep tearing each other apart. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I didn't respond, just turned and walked toward the door. Victor, she called after me, her voice breaking. Please, don't let this be the end of us. I paused but didn't turn around. I need time, Anna. I don't know if there's an us left to save. And with that, I left her standing alone, wondering if I had just drawn a line that neither of us could ever cross back over. The drive home was suffocatingly quiet, even though I was alone. My thoughts were a relentless tide, crashing and pulling me under with every memory, every moment of betrayal, every word Anna had said. Was she right? Had I gone too far? I parked the car in the driveway but didn't move. Instead, I stared at the dim glow of the porch light, the one Anna had always insisted we leave on just in case. It felt symbolic now, a flickering reminder of what used to be warm and comforting but now felt distant and hollow. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Flashes of the night tore through me. Anna's trembling hands, her broken voice, the look in her eyes when she asked if I still saw her as the woman I loved. I hated how the guilt gnawed at me, clawing its way through the thick wall of anger I'd built. The plan had been clear: show her how it felt to be exposed, to have her pride stripped away. But what had I really accomplished? Had I proven my point, or had I just sunk to a level I couldn't climb back from? Before I realized it, I was scrolling through my phone, my finger hovering over Mark's name. He'd always been the practical one, the voice of reason when I got lost in my emotions. I hit call, and after a couple of rings, he picked up. "Vic," he said, his voice cautious. "You okay?" "Not really," I admitted. "I need to talk. I think I screwed up." "You want me to come over?" "No, I'm already home," I said, running a hand through my hair. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, Mark. I thought I was teaching her a lesson, but now I feel like the bad guy." Mark sighed heavily. "Look, man, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. What Anna did was wrong. No question. But you've got to ask yourself, what's your endgame here? Are you trying to save your marriage? Or are you just trying to punish her?" "I don't know," I muttered, my voice hollow. "I don't know what I want anymore." "Well, you'd better figure it out," Mark said firmly. "Because if you keep this up, you're both going to lose. And maybe that's what she deserves. But is that what you want? To destroy everything just to prove a point?" His words hit like a hammer. I didn't respond right away, my grip tightening around the phone. "Look," Mark continued, his tone softer now, "I'm not saying you have to forgive her, but if there's even a chance you still love her, you've got to decide if this fight is worth it. Otherwise, let her go. Vic, stop dragging both of you through the mud." The call ended shortly after, but Mark's words lingered long after I hung up. Was I trying to save my marriage, or had this become a fight for my pride? I stepped into the house, the stillness inside pressing down on me. Upstairs, I could hear the faint sound of Anna moving around. I didn't go to her. Instead, I sat on the edge of the couch, staring into the darkness. The line between justice and vengeance had blurred, and now I was left with a decision that felt impossible. But one thing was certain: I couldn't keep doing this. Not to her. Not to myself. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and a heavy heart. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that weighs on you, like a reminder of everything that's wrong. I made my way to the kitchen, and there she was, Anna. She sat at the table, nursing a mug of coffee, her eyes puffy from crying. She didn't look at me, and for a moment, I wondered if she even knew I was there. "Morning," I said cautiously, breaking the silence. She looked up, her expression tired but wary. "Morning." I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, trying to find the right words. They felt lodged somewhere between my throat and chest, tangled up with anger and guilt. "Anna," I began, my voice low, "we need to figure out where we go from here." She nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "I know, but I don't even know if there's a here left, Victor. After last night, after everything." Her words stung, but I couldn't argue with them. I wanted you to feel what I felt, I admitted, my tone raw. To understand what it's like to have everything you believe in torn apart. Anna met my gaze, her eyes glistening. And did it work? Do you feel better now? I opened my mouth to respond but stopped. Did I? I thought about her standing in that bathhouse, vulnerable and exposed, and realized the answer wasn't as simple as I'd thought. No, I said finally. It didn't make me feel better. It just made me feel empty. Her shoulders sagged, and she looked down at her coffee. Victor, I know I've hurt you in ways I can never take back, and I know saying I'm sorry doesn't fix it. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I made the worst choices, it was never because I didn't love you. I stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on me. If you loved me, why didn't you come to me, Anna? Why didn't you trust me enough to let me help? Tears slipped down her cheeks as she shook her head. I was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of watching you break under the weight of everything. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that I was just pushing you further away. Her vulnerability cut through me, slicing through the anger I'd been holding onto for so long. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who had betrayed me, but as someone who was just as broken as I was. I don't know if I can forgive this, I said, my voice trembling. I don't even know if I should, but I do know that this can't go on. Not like this. Anna nodded, her face crumpling. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. But I want you to know, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right, even if you don't stay. The honesty in her voice was almost too much to bear. I turned away, staring out the window as the morning sun crept over the horizon. Let me think, Anna, I said quietly. Just let me think. And as the silence settled between us once more, I realized that no matter what decision I made, nothing would ever be the same again. The following morning, I woke early, the faint light of dawn creeping through the curtains. Anna was still asleep, curled up on her side of the bed, her face softened by the vulnerability of slumber. For a moment, I wondered how we had gotten here. Two people who had once shared everything, now strangers tied together by fragile threads of memory and regret. But the longer I stared at her, the clearer it became. This wasn't something that could be fixed. No amount of promises or therapy could erase what had been done or restore the trust that had been shattered. I got up quietly, careful not to wake her, and made my way downstairs. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, I mentally went through the conversation I knew we needed to have. There was no anger left, no bitterness, just a hollow acceptance of what had to happen. When Anna finally came downstairs, she looked hopeful, her eyes searching mine for some sign of reconciliation. Victor, she began, her voice tentative. Did you think about what we talked about last night?
I nodded, gesturing for her tog sit.
I did, and I've come to a decision. She sat across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I'll do anything, Victor. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. Her desperation made my chest tighten, but I forced myself to stay steady. Anna, I believe you mean that. I believe you want to make things right. But I also know that some things can't be undone. Her face fell, tears brimming in her eyes. You don't mean that. We can get through this, Victor. We can rebuild. I shook my head, my voice calm but firm. I don't think we can, Anna. I've been holding on to this idea that maybe we could find our way back. But the truth is, the foundation of what we had is gone. And without trust, there's nothing left to rebuild on. Her tears spilled over, and she reached for my hand, her grip desperate. Please, Victor, don't give up on us. Don't give up on me. I pulled my hand away gently, standing up and walking to the window. This isn't about giving up. It's about knowing when to let go. We've been hurting each other, Anna. Dragging this out will only make it worse. She sobbed openly now, her cries filling the space between us. I love you, Victor, she choked out. I never stopped loving you. I turned to face her, my own eyes stinging with unshed tears. And I loved you, but love isn't enough, Anna. Not when it's been buried under so many lies. She stood, crossing the room to grab my arm. We can start over. Please, let's start over. I gently removed her hand, my heart breaking as I saw the pain in her eyes. Starting over doesn't erase what's happened, and I don't want to live the rest of my life wondering if there's another secret waiting to surface. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Her tears slowed, replaced by a look of quiet devastation. "What happens now?" she whispered. I sighed, the weight of the decision settling over me. "I'll move out for now. We'll file for divorce. It'll take time, but we'll figure out how to separate our lives. And I'll make sure you're okay financially." She nodded slowly, her shoulders slumping as the reality set in. "I never wanted this," she said softly. "Neither did I," I replied, my voice heavy. "But sometimes what we want doesn't matter." As I packed a bag and left the house later that morning, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with grief. This was the end of us, but maybe it was also the beginning of something else. A chance to heal, to rebuild separately. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe.